Hey, peeps, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first in our series of podcasts that we've been promising and not delivering for some time now. My name's Oliver Young. I describe myself as a recovering community engagement person. Haven't been on the tools in a while, but that's what I did for about 25 years. My co-host is Michael Gotch, aka the Gotch. Mick, do you want to tell us about you?
Yeah, also a recovering communications and community engagement person. Worked with Ollie many years ago, continued to work with him on Scopo Map. Now much more focused on communications, less on engagement, but keeping a close eye on the on that space.
And our special guest today is Ollie, no relation. We had a discussion before. Every Oliver has their own abbreviation of how they spell it. I'm OLI, he's OLY. Ollie, tell us about you.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Always fun to have two Ollies in the conversation straight off the bat to keep it confusing. But yeah, my name's Oliver Batten and I'm from Destination Store. We're a destination specialist agency. We've got an office in Sydney, but we work all over Australia and do some work in the Pacific as well. So I'm the lead for destination strategy and impact, and sort of head up the strategy element of our business. But I'm sure we'll get into the nuts and bolts of your destination story a little bit.
So just a reminder, our podcast is about AI and community engagement. The reason we've got Ollie on is that while they do a whole lot of brand and place stuff, one of the inputs into those strategies is community engagement. And Ollie and I did a project recently where he used gratuitous plug Scopo Map on his project. But Ollie, before we get onto all the nuts and bolts stuff, tell us a bit about you. How did you end up at Destination Store? What did you do before that?
So I actually work or live and work down in the beautiful far south coast of New South Wales, down in a little town called Narooma, sort of where I grew up. Thankful to work for an organisation, that are happy for me to work remotely, but it also fits quite well with the work we do because we do a lot of work in regional destinations. So I have been with Destination Store for a bit over 3 years now, about 3.5 years. And without telling you my whole career journey, I guess, prior to being at Destination Store, I actually worked within local government myself at Eurobodalla Shire Council as the tourism and events manager there. And we actually hired Destination Store. It was Destination Marketing Store at that time, which is our former name, now Destination Store. But we hired Destination Store to actually write the destination action plan for the Eurobodalla. And so I sat on the council side of the fence, working with Destination Store on the long-term vision and destination plan for the region. And then sort of as that project came to a wrap, the opportunity presented itself to join the DS team. So I sort of jumped shipped, but still work very closely with Eurobodalla Shire Council. It's where I live and they're still a client of ours. So that's kind of a brief snapshot of how I joined the DS team.
Was it a big culture change coming out of council? I mean, for someone who's done a lot of work with councils, I have a very vague notion of what it's like working in a council, but culture change?
It definitely was. I mean, I've worked in the private sector before as well. I've worked in the private sector, the not-for-profit sector, sort of the university sector. So it definitely came at a time where I was, craving a bit of fast-paced action. And so, it was just sort of an opportunities alignment, really. So I knew what I was in for, but it was refreshing as well to kind of step away from local government for a little while and hit the ground running. Working on destinations all across Australia, which has been interesting and challenging as well.
I met with you and Charlotte and I've got a terrible name. Ages ago now, like well over a year, maybe more than that. in Surrey Hills for coffee. And it was fascinating to me because I don't think I'd really thought about councils marketing themselves in the way that obviously you guys help them do. Tell us, I mean, I know there's the work that you do. Just tell us generally what Destination Store do. Like, what's the offer? What kind of stuff do you do?
Yeah. Look, we describe ourselves as destination specialists, and we really work across sort of three quite clear work streams. So we have the strategy and impact space. So as I said, that's kind of where I head up a lot of our strategy work, but that looks like, you know, destination management plans, visitor economy strategies, visitor servicing strategies, and that's often where a lot of our work starts with local government and councils. The second arm of our business is brand marketing and campaigns. So often once we've developed a strategy for a destination or a place, it's, you know, how do we then bring that to life? And that's often through, you know, a repositioning, a new branding piece. And we actually put campaigns into market as well for that destination.
Why do councils do that? Like, why does a council want a brand?
Well, I mean, in a traditional model or a traditional sense and a bit more old school, you know, a destination management plan and also a destination brand in that sense is about attracting visitors to the destination to spend more money and to stimulate the economy. Certainly there's a bit more of an evolution of that or a shift away from that rather than just focusing on the visitor. It's more, we're seeing a lot of destinations develop place-based strategies or place brands. Which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit later in one of the examples we'll talk about today. But yeah, it's all about, it is about, you know, stimulating the economy and, you know, inviting the right visitors into the destination, you know, people that are really going to value that place, but not purely for the economic or the financial return. Now it's a lot about the social benefit as well. So, you know, how do they give back to that place? How do they engage with the community? How do they engage with the environment?
So I know that in the discussions we've had around some of the work you do, a lot of the work you do is with regional councils.
Yeah.
And I think what I found really interesting was the notion that, of course, I mean, I know people sort of grow up in the country and potentially move to the city. And so councils are looking to retain their young people, but also attract people from a range of different professional backgrounds. Is that part of the gig?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's, I think certainly even just, in the last 3 years or so that I've been at Destination Store, I've really seen sort of the crossover or the blend of, you know, like what you could label, I guess, tourism with sort of economic development, but even community development and, you know, community engagement. So, you know, as I said, traditionally you might have had purely destination action plans or destination management plans, whereas now they're getting blended with economic development strategies. And so, it's really important for us to think about not just how do we get the right visitors to this place, but how do we get people to invest in this place? How do we get, young people to stay? We often have to look at, you know, things like housing affordability or the housing crisis in a lot of situations. In a lot of these situations around regional Australia, and, you know, how does that impact travel and residents and communities? So I mean, it is all interlinked.
So we discussed the work that you do. We've lost Michael, but that's all right. You and I keep talking. We discussed the work that you do with councils. What other type of clients do you guys have? You talked about some of that stuff in the Pacific. That sounds pretty interesting.
Yeah, I guess lastly, and just to wrap from the last question, the third area that we do for work is digital. So we actually also manage the socials, but also all the online channels for some of our clients too. And that was really a way for us to be able to offer that end-to-end service from strategy through to actually delivering it for our clients. And so we sort of like to sit in that vertical for destinations as a bit of a specialist. But in terms of some of the other clients, you know, we have absolutely worked with private clients before, you know, private businesses or entities as well as not-for-profit organizations. We have done some work in Pacific over the last couple of years. Working, we did a full destination brand for Kiribati, which is a tiny Pacific island right in the middle of nowhere, as well as a marketing plan for Papua New Guinea.
Wow.
Years. So, yeah, and look, that's sort of tied up a bit with the experience of the team and sort of beyond my time at Destination Store. Carl, who's one of our directors, has done a lot of work in that space. Charlotte as well actually has done a bit of work in the Pacific, but Destination Store has been around for a long time now, well over 10 years with Carl and Charlotte, so they've had some experience working over in the Pacific more so.
Far out. Michael, you left us.
Yeah, sorry.
Had something better to do. I do a lot of talking in these things. Mick, is there anything you'd like to?
Well, at the risk of repeating questions that have already been asked, just talking about Destination Store, you're talking about impact, social impact, economic impact. Can you talk about what kind of things that you're measuring when you're looking at those impacts?
Yeah, so I mean, again, sort of in the traditional sense, destinations are always going to look at, visitation numbers, spend data, nights booked in terms of an accommodation sense. And they do give a really clear indication of movement with tourism spend. And I guess that sort of mobility data. More so, we are moving into the space of those social elements. So, things like doing sentiment surveys with community, whether that's possible at the beginning of a project to kind of set a bit of a benchmark, and then further down the track to re-engage that, to re-measure that, I suppose. Yeah, I guess in terms of community well-being, so looking at things like, increases in employment rates and, increased investment in the region, what pieces do they play in the overall well-being and value that is being delivered to that community. So coming up with like a values-based measurement framework and how, what are the core values that community have and how to measure against them is increasingly important. Some of those values can be trickier than others to measure. Others you can use certain tools or AI tools even for that sense to kind of get a bit of insight into that metric.
Yep. And in terms of isolating the impact of your work, how do you go about that? Knowing what's the result of your strategies and advice? How does that work?
Yeah, look, that is a bit of a tough one sometimes.
Yeah.
Being a strategy consultant, sometimes you do hand over a strategy and you don't kind of really get to see it in action. I mean, we very much try to design our strategies so they're not strategies that sit on the shelf. They have a roadmap or an action plan attached to them, and for a lot of our clients, that strategy sort of becomes their operational plan on what they deliver on the ground with their team. So some of our clients we work with for years in a row because, one strategy moves on to the next thing. And that's when you really get to start to see the value of the work you're doing and the transformation of the work you're doing. So it might have started with, a destination strategy. We've then developed the brand for them. We've then put campaigns into market. We also manage their socials. And then you really start to see, an example of this is, we do a lot of work with Lithgow City Council, and we've rebranded them as Seven Valleys, and we currently manage their socials and online channels. Right. But one of the main issues they had for that council area was perception. The perception of Lithgow as a coal mining town, and trying to move that destination or that place into its next phase. And so, having worked with that client for a few years, you can start to see the impact you're having in the shift of perception, and the sort of sentiment that are coming through from the campaigns you run, the engagement on socials, as well as those sort of, I guess, more hard figures that come in around spend and decision.
That's a good one for Lithgow, because I've been to Lithgow a fair bit in the past. And there are some really beautiful areas just outside Lithgow town centre There was a pretty flash retreat run by Emirates that used to be there.
Yeah.
And most people's exposure to Lithgow is Macca's when they're driving through to Bathurst or something. So it's good to see that.
It's incredible. I mean, that as a destination, they are surrounded by spectacular national parks. They've got Captain Valley, Wolgan Valley, Gardens of Stone, and so it's really, I mean, we develop a strategy, but then it kind of, is really about, what's the positioning of this destination? What does it have to offer? And then how do we tell that story and get that across? And it's not necessarily shifting the perceptions of visitors to Lithgow. It's actually changing the perceptions of the locals themselves and what they think about the place they live.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
That is. So jumping into, I know that a lot of our listeners are community engagement people, not exclusively, but some of them are. I know engagement plays a role in your work. Can you talk to that?
Yeah. Yep. So, I mean, as a consultant, we sort of work on a project to project basis. So, but any project we work on has a community consultation element. So, most projects kind of start with and this is me generalizing a little bit, but sort of a research and discovery phase. So often with a client, being a local government, they'll give us access to all of their other, sort of relevant strategies and documents, or maybe even data that they've got on hand for us to kind of dig our teeth into and really get a sense for what that place is about. But then it's, and from doing that sort of desktop analysis, you really kind of pull some nuggets out of that information that you want to test with the community. You might kind of, find perception issues or, whatever it may be. And then, we build out an engagement schedule with the client. So it usually always involves a number of workshops, interviews, whether they're roundtable discussions, whether they're coffee catch-ups over breakfast. You've really kind of got to meet the person who you're engaging with where they're at. We will always, kind of push the client to meet with certain groups or people who we think are important. So, for instance, it's usually always important to sort of engage with the First Nation representatives within a community. So, whether that's through the local Aboriginal Land Council, or sometimes they've got, an advisory committee, so it's kind of sitting down with the client, identifying who all the key stakeholders are who we think need to be engaged with in the process. And then I guess coming up with a bit of a schedule on how to engage those people. Like, is it via Teams because they don't actually live in the region, or is it coming to the destination? And in most cases, we're in the destination for, anywhere between 1 to 2 weeks, meeting with a whole bunch of different stakeholders and getting a lot of that qualitative data.
And what kind of questions are you asking people? Like when Mick and I did engagement, the vast majority of the work we did was around contested land use projects.
Mm-hmm.
And quite often we're talking to people about impacts. I mean, we'd like to be talking about other things, but generally a lot of the projects we did were quite contested and hot. But you're doing stuff where you're going out and you're asking people about, I'm guessing, values, attitudes, aspirations. Is that?
Yeah, definitely. So I think, there's an essence of wanting to understand, what is happening on the ground. So, what are people's pain points and challenges with tourism, and again, focusing in a little bit on tourism in this example, but understanding, do people feel like they've got over tourism? Do they feel like they not have enough tourism? Is it seasonal? What are the challenges they're facing? What are the opportunities? So I guess that's a pretty clear, broadly speaking, way of looking at the challenges and opportunities for that place. But almost in all the work we do too, there is definitely that aspirational element. So we do find sometimes going into a community, people can get quite bogged down in their day-to-day, and the conversation can quickly go into potholes on roads and rubbish bins not being collected on time and that sort of thing. So it's important to kind of try to steer that community consultation in a productive way, and get them to think aspirationally around, okay, well, you want more visitors to this region, or you want more investment in this region. What kind of businesses do you want to see in your main street? Or, what kind of visitor do you want to stay in your little bed and breakfast? How old are they? What occupation do they have? Do they have kids? What kind of place do you want to create? Because from that, we're able to create personas, which really help us kind of unpack, what those challenges and opportunities are, and kind of steer the narrative on, the vision and where they want to go.
Yeah, beautiful.
Sorry, Mick.
I was gonna take the baton now that he mentioned personas, and let's dig into those as a way into the Central Coast project. Can you, Ollie? Can you speak to a lot of people in the engagement world are broadly familiar with personas? I don't think they're widely used. I don't think they're widely understood. I think, or they have a poor perception, partly because personas haven't been used very well. They're superficial.
They've been used for marketing purposes mainly. I mean,
yeah, but even then, not even well, right? So my question, Ollie, is, can you give me a sense of what personas are for you, what their use is like, and what a good persona looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, personas really are sort of, I guess, representative profiles of all the sort of different types of people who either live in or work in or even engage with a place. And for us, I mean, maybe this taps into a little bit of, sometimes how they're misused or not created properly. But for us, it's really to build a persona that is built from real data rather than guesswork. So rather than building a persona that's based on a stereotype or an anecdotal thing you've heard, is, who are the people who live in this place? What does their life actually look like? And if you can create quite realistic personas based on that data and that evidence, then it really helps you to make decisions on messaging, on the services, the engagement styles, by actually being able to put yourself in that person's shoes. So I mean, a persona to us is quite a detailed persona. So I guess as an example, I'm talking at least a 2-page description about a person. Like that's, to me, that persona has a bit of depth. They've got a name, what their age are, so some of that basic demographic data. But then you go into their interests and what their concerns are. How do they engage with information? Are they digitally literate? And how do we communicate with them? Is also increasingly important. And I guess it helps you step into those shoes, particularly if you can create a visual of that persona. For me personally, I find you can write a 2-page persona, but until you've actually got a picture of what that person looks like, you can actually really start to connect with them. And I mean, it's kind of as close to as them kind of coming to life, really. And understanding what their needs are. So
and I'll get to this in a minute, because I saw you create images for some of the personas that we created through Scopo Map. But before you had things like AI or something like Scopo, how did you create personas? Did you use them in a detailed way? How did you create them?
We definitely still created them. It was a lot more time consuming. So I guess sort of, digging for the data. And I mean, you can go on and get census data online around, the kind of people that live in a certain place. And you can kind of start to pull some of that key demographic data together. You do try to match that with more, I guess, qualitative data. So whether, again, if the council is a client, no doubt they've done community consultation for their community strategic plan or whatever it may be. So kind of trying to get a sense for the tone that people are, talking about a place or what their interests are and that sort of thing. But then, in my experience, it then involved, endless scrolls on Google trying to find an image that kind of is a bit reflective of what you've got written on a page. So yeah, not always the easiest task. Now with AI and, AI image generation, that has really kind of changed things, I think. And I mean, to reflect on the example with Central Coast, so yeah, we created a representative group of personas for that project, around 8, and pulled them out of Scope Map and put them into ChatGPT and said, can you create an image of what we've described here as a persona? And the visuals it created, like it took my breath away a little bit. I kind of had to step back from my computer and really, like simple things like, Jess is 30 years old. She lives on the Central Coast. She relies on public transport, and maybe that's all it's got to go off. But the image it created of Jess, the architecture in the background was architecture you'd see on the Central Coast, and there was a beach in the background, and she was at a bus stop because she uses public transport. And all of a sudden, it felt like, whoa, this actually is Jess. And, we can start to ask Jess questions and feel like we're getting genuine responses from that persona.
So let's go. I mean, we've got the door open now. Let's go to that Central Coast project.
Yeah.
It's, by memory, it's the first one that we did together.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about that project and your use of AI. We've touched on the persona stuff. Just tell us about the project to start with, what you were doing for council.
Yeah, so we were engaged by Central Coast Council to develop a place brand strategy for council. And they had a destination brand, which was Love Central Coast. It was created a number of years ago, but they wanted us to review that brand and sort of evolve it from a destination brand, which was, primarily focused at visitors and getting visitors to Central Coast, into a place brand that looked more broadly at how do we attract investment and businesses, and also engage with our residents as well. So it really was sort of an evolution process for the Central Coast. We weren't responsible for creating the sort of the brand in the end, or the creative, if you like, but building the strategy behind it.
Yeah. And so, I mean, my memory of it was we used Scope Map, or Bruce, our AI, to create some personas that we thought were generally representative of a sample of people on the Central Coast.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, these are sort of some of our first meetings. I think Ollie was, and yeah, I think, you ran a bit of a demo with me around what Scope Map could do. And we sort of ring fenced the local government area on the Central Coast and started digging into sort of that census and, I guess, demographic data at the LGA level, but then also went a little bit deeper and started looking at the towns and villages that make up the Central Coast, and even I think at the ward level, which was really interesting. And so we started to get a bit of a sense for what the population makeup of the Central Coast was, and because we had that data, we were able to develop a representative I guess personas for those. I think in the end, from memory, we went with 8. It really kind of is how long is a piece of string. You can develop 20 personas if you want, but in the end, you just want to keep it concise enough but informative enough that you've kind of covered off I guess the key personas in that area. So we had, from memory, we had a slightly elder retiree. We had
the aptly named Barry and Carol.
There you go. You remember better than I do, but yeah.
I'm looking at the case study.
Yeah, sure. Nice. And we had a local Aboriginal elder that was part of that representative group. We had sort of a young working professional. So yeah, trying to kind of get a representative from some of those core audiences so that we could we could ask them the consultation questions, which we had, drafted, ready to take and to deliver in person in the Central Coast, but to ask them to the personas themselves to see what responses we got from them, because once we did that and then asked the community, we really wanted to see if there was an alignment there. And I think, taking a bit of a step back, I think the reason, and we were asked by council, or a councillor had mentioned, the use of Scopomap for this project and their interest in it. And I think it really was to ensure that the strategy we were going to deliver was grounded in evidence, but that it was, representative of the whole community and the whole community's voice. Because something we hear often working in local governments is, you come in and you do community consultation, but it's always the same people who turn up in community consultation. And, you might have some particularly loud voices in the community. And, it is challenging sometimes to get a representative
it's really
the whole community in community consultation. So I guess just having that level of persona development as a reassurance, and, to see that correlation, if it's there, is just adding sort of an element of rigor to that engagement process.
Well, it was an interesting one for us, because I think it was about the 4th or 5th live project that we'd run with the whole persona idea. And for those of you who aren't familiar, we create some personas. Then we ask the AI Bruce to role play being each persona. And then we ask the questions that are going to be asked in a focus group, on an online survey, at an information session, whatever else. And then we compare the results in the real world. And up until this one, generally a lot of the stuff we'd done had been theme matching. So the personas said X and the community said X. This one, you guys were really good in the way that you had some questions in your live survey that allowed us to capture some demographic data about the respondents. So a lot of people generally haven't done that in community engagement. I think we would, but we don't. There's been some fear that people might not respond on a survey if they think they're somehow being identified, but generally that hasn't been my experience. And Ollie, I don't think it's been yours, particularly if you ask, things in the context of we're committed to transparent and inclusive engagement, yada, yada.
Yeah.
What was really interesting, the theme matching in these processes that we've run, and we've run about 17 now, the theme matching's always been pretty good, somewhere between 83 and 97% between what the synthetic persona said and what the real world people said. But the really interesting thing about this was we had an 85 to 90% match of it being a representative sample. Right, so you had a massive cross section of the Central Coast community, which is pretty rare, Ollie, in my experience. And a really good result.
Yeah, and look, it was good. It was good in the Central Coast example. I guess we had lots of different layers of consultation. So we did go into destination, and we did workshops with larger groups of people. We did one-on-one interviews. We did Teams meetings. But I guess doing the sort of more general community survey was sort of another layer on top of that, just to kind of which we hoped would sort of open the doors to more community voice, being that they didn't have to attend a certain session. They could kind of do it in their own time. We gave them a month to submit their responses. But we were sort of experimenting as well, but it was good we intentionally wanted to get a bit of that demographic data, but also keep the questions quite consistent to what we asked the personas, so that we could see that level of like for like comparison and whether it fit the bill. Like it was a really interesting process. I think it's awesome to see that there was quite a strong correlation there. It also was interesting to see like the limitations of the personas and the kind of answers they provide. And whilst they really kind of did pick up the core themes and sort of some of those challenges and opportunities, they really don't have the the lived
fine grain.
experience on the ground and the small details that you
Yeah.
kind of pick up in that face-to-face community consultation. So, you know, it's really good to see that
Great.
relation and then use that, you know, the face-to-face consultation to really understand like what that means and like what are some case examples of, you know, that challenge or that opportunity on the ground that we're seeing play out.
Yeah. Mick?
Yeah, so just Ollie, checking with you, what I'm hearing from
Can
you.
just be clear which Ollie? Because I'm
Sorry?
finding that slightly disturbing. I think you're talking to me, but you're not.
Oh, okay. I'm going to call
Ollie,
you
Ollie B.
Ollie B. Ollie B. Am I right in understanding with the personas? One, it gave you a point at the beginning that sometimes you go out and consult, and it's whoever turns up, that's the results you get. So for you, it was a good way to give you a bit of confidence in your survey results as a sort of a cross check. That was one. Was that?
Yeah. Look, it gives us a bit of confidence, but it also, again, really gives the confidence to the client. So again, that counsellor who's requested it in the end, you know, they want to make sure that their community's voice is being heard. So it kind of just adds that extra layer. I think it's really like a complementary thing to add to a stakeholder engagement process. I think face-to-face consultation is so important for so many reasons in terms of really understanding the nuances of what's happening on the ground, but also, you know, that face-to-face engagement is what builds trust in the end strategy.
Of course.
And to me, trust is one of the most, if not the most important things when it comes to delivering strategy. So it's definitely just sort of an add-on and a complementary service, but just adds to that rigor, adds to that confidence. And, you know, if council does get complained that, like, you know, Joe Bloggs came in and, you know, ruled the room and only his opinion was, you know, captured in this strategy, it's like, well, no, we've actually done quite a rigorous process here of giving different ways of community engagement, and it's, you know, it's been reinforced by what our representative personas have told us as well.
Cool.
Hey, Ollie, I'm interested. Are you using AI, and not necessarily our AI, but other AI for stuff, either engagement or other parts of your job?
Definitely, and increasingly so. I think the nature of the beast that we're working at the moment. I mean, we constantly experimenting with it, and we're finding more and more, you know, even just like the tools and platforms that we use have their own AI integrated elements to it now. So I mean, we use some of the more general AI such as ChatGPT or Claude to help us just really with improving business workflow and efficiencies. You know, they're really good at synthesizing large bits of information and research. They're also really handy for, you know, spotting trends in large data sets. So, you know, that can be a really time-saving exercise. Of course, there's always the human element to come in and check whether that's right. But so we do use some of those more general ones, but we... like another example, I guess, is we're Lakalis certified. So Lakalis is another Australian-based data agency, and they, you know, from them we get to look at not just one LGA specific data, but actually the data across all of Australia. And in that we can look at spend data, some mobility data, accommodation data, flight data, sentiment data. They now have an AI, I guess, element to their platform. And so that really helps us 100%. To interrogate data and to synthesize data as well. So,
does their AI have a name?
Sorry?
Does their AI have a name?
I don't believe so, actually. I don't think they haven't given it sort of a Australian name like Bruce.
Can I ask Ollie Batten, can I ask a question about something you said before about using AI-generated images for the personas? And you were saying, you know, you're kind of struck by the impact of that. Can you, like, articulate? Okay, so I'm trying to think, like, if you can put your finger on, like, what is that impact? Like, what's the difference between reading something and then seeing that person? Can you describe what what that does for you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm trying to think about it from a point of view of like me personally, but also for our client, because that they saw the personas we created, and
Yeah.
they were also quite taken aback by them,
Right.
because it's almost like, I obviously had never met the personas before because they'd made up, but they looked like and felt like real people, which maybe maybe the impact is that they feel more relatable rather than just more than just words on a page. And I mean, that might exclusively be for me, like a very visual learner, so actually seeing someone's face makes it feel more real, particularly when you're flicking through a large strategy document.
That's right.
To really have the faces of the people feels like I guess for the client as well, probably makes them feel like, well, yeah, these people is exactly the kind of person I would see down the
resonates.
market. Yeah, exactly.
And I wonder if, because there's so much, because you've prompted that image with like real information, and then that visual becomes actually shorthand for all those words that you've put into it. So there's all those visual signifiers in the image that in an instant tell you lots of stuff. Anyway, I found that very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, what's next for Destination Store? You've got some big projects coming up. Can you talk about any of them?
Yeah, I mean, the nature of our work is sort of ebbs and flows. We've had a couple of big projects sort of wrap up recently. So we've been in proposal writing land a little bit this last couple of weeks. So hopefully some new projects coming up on the near horizon, but we sort of haven't heard back from them yet. So I can't drop any big news, but we've got a conference coming up. So we sponsor City Nation Place, and they're a UK-based agency, but they run, this will be the second year they've run an Australasian conference, and they're partnering with Main Street Australia. It's coming up in early August in the Gold Coast, so we'll be speaking at that, and that's really to, as I sort of said early on in the piece, we're sort of seeing a bit of a transformation in our industry of moving away from just destination specific to more place-based strategies and brands and plans. So City Nation Place is exactly that. They're sort of, leading in the industry around place-based strategies and place-based branding. So yeah, we're excited to be, the whole team's heading up to the Gold Coast for that, which will be really great to just network and connect in with people who are looking at sort of destinations or places more holistically. But yeah, we've got some ongoing clients. As I said earlier, we're still doing work with Lithgow City Council. We're doing work with the Office of the 24-Hour Commissioner here in New South Wales as well, delivering programs for clusters of councils and businesses around the state around the nighttime economy, which is an exciting one. But yeah, look, we kind of at a phase now too where we are in a really experimental phase where we're looking at new AI tools, new data sets. It's a bit of a fast moving beast at the moment, but it's an exciting time for our business too, to kind of look at ways that we can improve the work that we're doing, and look at some of our internal processes and things as well. So
that's fabulous. Well, I've got I will have in the next 2 weeks. I'm looking at one of my developers now, should we get all the bugs out of it. Some updates to Scopo Map that I reckon you guys will find really interesting.
Awesome.
Particularly our SurveyMonkey type feedback form that automatically benchmarks respondents against a sample. And against themes. So that's something that I will come out and show you guys in a couple of weeks.
Great.
Mick, anything else before we wrap up?
No, really interesting hearing about your work. Ollie B.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for seeing us today and having Ollie squared on an episode. Our next episode, folks, is going to be with Abby and Ryan from Landcom, talking about all the stuff that they're doing around AI and community engagement. But for this episode, thanks, Ollie. Really appreciate you coming.
Yeah, thanks, Nick, and thanks, Ollie. It's been a good chat, and excited to see the updates and continue to see where it goes.
Cool. Gotch, anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Sweet. Thanks for listening.
All right.
See you guys.
Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.
Bye.